It's a really powerful and sacred space. And people knew this back in the tantric traditions. Everybody really reverenced this space between the seen and unseen worlds. It's the life force, the life energy of our human race. It lives in that space.
Welcome to the 1000 Days Sober podcast. My name is Lee Davey. I am not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I am someone that doesn't drink alcohol. And I spend every single moment of my life helping other people do the same. Like right now. Yes. Exploring the masculine and feminine with Mary Tamul. But before we get there, a little bit of housekeeping. You may know that there's a little something around the corner called Christmas. And I don't know about you, but when I was younger, it used to stress me out. Now, not when I was a kid. Well, it did used to stress me out when I was a kid as well, because we never used to get fuck all, which had its own consequences. But there was an aspect of being a kid that I liked. It's when I was being an adult. I just didn't like it. I didn't like the financial burden and stress that it put on me. I never had enough money. I always felt less than. Every morning I would get up and wish I'd bought my son more because I was one of these people who's like suffered from external validation and I got all my self-worth from outside of myself. So I always really, really struggled with Christmas, right? Really struggled. And then towards the end of my drinking, I really struggled with it in terms of drinking, you know? And I would very often just pair off with the kids, like leave me with the kids. I'll play with all the games and the toys with the kids while everybody else goes off to get rat-ass. I really didn't like Christmas. It provided a lot of stress and pressure for me, right? So if you're feeling that yourself, like if you're feeling about Christmas, if it overwhelms you, if it produces anxiety, if the whole thought about drinking is like forefront of your mind, then reach out to us at 1kdayssober@gmail.com. 1kdayssober@gmail.com. That's the number one. We got group coaching programs, okay? We've got the Strive method of relationship and the Strive method for addictions, 6 months personal coaching plans, as well as group coaching plans. We have our private Facebook group. Okay, and we of course, we're here as well. Okay, also check out Instagram. Got a lot of good stuff going on Instagram. Okay, you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to be alone. There is no better time than now to stop drinking alcohol or to stop smoking cigarettes. So come on, give us a shout. Okay. All right. Now, without further ado, I will introduce our next guest. So do you often find yourself stuck in a rut? When you experience a setback, how do you move on? Do you think you're living the best version of yourself? What should you do to gain a sense of fulfillment in life? Well, in this episode, Mary Tamul answers all of these questions and more. She also talks about how to break through traditional mindsets and the importance of masculine and feminine energies in healing relationships and transforming the self. Tune in to find out how you can create a better life for yourself as well as for the people around you. Episode highlights include Life is What You Make It, Decaying Masculine Structure and Womb Space, Fostering Sexual Awareness, Mary's Personal Coaching Style, Masculine and Feminine Energy, Misconceptions on Feminine Energy, and What the Best Medicine Is. And Mary Tamul is a woman's empowerment coach, helping women who want to create an abundant and purposeful life. She specializes in teaching women how to embody their sexuality, redefine self-worth, and cultivate inner peace and happiness. And if you want to learn more about this show, head over to www.1000dayssober.com. Click on the podcast page. You'll find the episode with Mary Tamul. You'll be able to download the show notes. Join our email list if you want to know more about the good stuff going on here. And also find all the links that you can get hold of Mary and hire her to work with. So without further ado, shut the hell up and leave you in the capable hands of Mary Tamul. Thanks for listening. Juice right off the bat. Mary Tamul, how are you doing? So you're on a road trip?
Yes, I am. I've been on the road since the beginning of August. So it's been quite amazing. I've made a lot of connections and had a lot of adventures and just learned a lot about myself, really, has been the main takeaway from the last 3 months or so.
Tell me something that you've learned about yourself.
Where do I begin? Wow, that's a big one. I think the biggest thing that I've learned now has been just the way that I've been attached to so many things in my life, and that, it's really all just what you make of it. And the attachments that we have to people, places, and things a lot of times hold us back in life from actually moving forward and going after our dreams. Because it's like, you can't be in two places at once. That's what I'm dealing with right now. It's like, I'm here in this amazing community in Sedona, and I'm going to Mexico next week, and I'm going to, explore what that has to offer. And it's like, I want to stay here with these people. But at the same time, I want to keep continuing my adventures. And I think, that showed up in a lot of different ways in my life. Like, I want to, be with family and friends, but I also can't go out and explore all this new territory and do all these new things, starting these projects that I just love and that I want to do more of, while still being in the old patterns and in the old places and attached to the old, what's been working maybe up until now. Like, I think there's somebody that says, you can't get further. What's worked up until now will not work to get you to the next place that you want to be.
Yeah, it reminds me of, thanks for sharing that. And at the end of it, you reminded me and you are in a coaching container called The Leap. And the very first thing that we had to do in The Leap was a burial ceremony, which was literally killing our old self and moving forward into our new self. But there was an aspect of that we didn't just get out an Uzi 9mm and shoot our old self to bits. We actually were very grateful for how that old, slightly dysfunctional, immature part of ourselves got us to where we are, right?
Totally. Yes. It's so true. I was just talking to somebody this morning who is going through, he's actually a male, like his mid 40s. He's going through an awakening, quit his job, has been on antidepressants and has gone through just so much already. And, now has moved out to do life off the grid, because he's just like, I need that reset. I need that fresh air and just a totally new way of being. And I see that a lot with people out here, a lot of men in their midlife, just starting these new lives because they just can't take it anymore. The pressure of their day-to-day life. A lot of them getting divorced and just going on the road and seeing what else is out there. And it's really inspiring being a younger person seeing this. And because I really believe that especially men middle-aged, I know that's that's the people that you work with. So that's why I'm bringing it up. It's just they are in so need of a rebirth and a revamping. And it's just so good to see men taking this on and, deciding to go against what is normally thought of as success, right? Because it's when it comes down to it, what even is success? And that's what I've learned on the road as well, is success is what you make of it. I have everything I need to be able to not be on the road. I don't have to. It's a choice that I'm making. And it's to see what I'm really made of and what is really out there and possible for me. And a lot of it is just who you surround yourself with on a day-to-day basis. Are they telling you, yes, you can? Or are they saying, no, you can't? And you have to look at that and really listen to what's coming across from other people.
It's really interesting that you're in Sedona, actually, because my wife, myself, my mother-in-law, and Zia, my 4-year-old, we were going to go to Sedona for a month this November, just to chill out and just to live there for a bit and just
You should.
But we decided instead, I'm gonna kick my wife out there to go on her own. She wants to. She wants to go on a little bit of a voyage of discovery. So go on, go do it. I mean that's really important in relationships. I think it's again stuck to that old stereotype of, well, if you don't go traveling together, there must be something wrong with your relationship, right? We always have to do things together because we're in this relationship. No, you don't. On Saturday, I'm just going to lock myself in a hotel room all day and night. I got a lot of work to do. I don't want to be around wives. I don't want to be around children. It's okay. You should just be able to do that. And if you want to go to Sedona for the weekend and just heal, you don't have to take your kids and your wife or your husband, right?
Yeah, that's hugely, that's huge that you can make that distinction and say that. I think that's absolutely right, especially with lockdown. People should be getting out and going into nature by themselves, doing these releasing ceremonies, doing what they need for them, doing what you need for you. I mean, for me, it's a lot of people saw my decision to take off on the road as a selfish decision, right? And I could have easily viewed it like that and been like, oh no, I'm not going to go because I shouldn't be, spending the money on this, or I should be somewhere concrete for my business because I can't. It's like, that's a little bullshit, because the reason that I even started to do coaching was that so I didn't have to be tied anywhere. And then so it was like, I couldn't even use that excuse in the first place. It's just letting go of the shame and the guilt around what you think you need to be doing. And you're kind of saying that with yeah.
Well, you're taking a power, aren't you? You're not letting anybody dictate. And then I imagine in relationships as well, it's so easy to get yourself in a rut where you feel guilty or even ashamed of saying, this is what I want. Particularly, like, let's say you're in a relationship and there's debt in that relationship, right? So you've got like debt, physical debt. And you really need to go somewhere to like heal, but it's going to cost money. And you're a woman, like, you're more likely to just keep stum and not say anything because you want to look after everybody else and you don't want to look after yourself. Whereas the guy's more likely to be like, fuck that. How much is it going to cost? $5,000. All right, we've got $5,000 more debt. I'm off. See you later. Look after the kids. Like, the guy will just look after himself. It's the woman who's kind of like, well, no, maybe you go, honey, like you go and do that. Right. And so I'm all about like killing those old stereotypes and helping women step into their power and just going, hey, do you know what? I'm going to Sedona. Do you know when I first saw this? Actually, I was in Marrakesh and me and Liza we joined this tagine making workshop. So we made a tagine and then we went for like a massage, like spa thing afterwards. And at this tagine place, I was the only man. Like, it was all women, but all these women were married. But they came to Marrakesh to do the tagine stuff and lots of other things and go out on camels and live out by the Atlas Mountains because their husbands didn't want to go. But they didn't say to themselves, oh, that's it, I'm fucked. For the rest of my life, I have to do what my husband says. I'm going to wilt my life away. They were just like, you don't want to come? No. Right. Fuck you, then. I'm off to Marrakesh. Right? Like, I love that. Love it.
Yeah. I feel like in other cultures, too, there's a lot more community among the women. And that's super important just for raising kids and keeping your mental health. Like, I know coming to Sedona, I found way supportive community among women here. And it's just so refreshing from city life where it's a lot of hustle and bustle and go, go, go. And you don't really have time to drop into that feminine, that which can, see beyond a lot of the BS and see beyond a lot of the structures and, masculine systems that we have to like really tap back into what matters. And even, see clairvoyant things, like be able to feel the directions of the north and the east and the west and the south and feel the seasons change and feel like what's happening and turning. Like, I know I've been feeling this for a while, even leading up to coronavirus and all of this craziness. And I know a lot of other intuitive women have, and men, of course, but just to like really reclaim the feminine and reclaim the mother and the grandmother and that history that we have that's so rich for the human race, really. And I think that that's going to be one of the big turning points of this coming age where, the masculine systems are kind of breaking down. And a lot of men, even just I've noticed, have been looking to women for the way forward, because we all know intuitively it's like that thing that everybody's mom is just so special to them. Of course, some people, things happen, but at birth, your mom is everything. And it's something that needs to be honored and like really appreciated for us to get the fullness of life.
And we're having this conversation about decaying masculine structures just as Joe Biden and Donald Trump, two the whitest, oldest men you can imagine, are fighting it out for dominance of the world. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, really. You specialize in women. I did a little intro beforehand. Well, I didn't. I'm going to do it later, but people listening to it would have heard it already. That's a bit weird, isn't it? What is it? Tell a little bit more about what you do with women.
Yeah, so I do women's empowerment coaching, and a lot of it is bringing women back to that intuitive nature, bringing them back to their knowing, because oftentimes we get led astray from it. I know I did, particularly when I was going through college. Like, really, I was very intense, I was very competitive, and I really stopped listening to my intuition. And in the end, got super just chronic depression, riddled with anxiety, was really super codependent, and all of that magic and that joy within me really got lost in all of that. So, what I do is to help women come back to themselves and to find that clarity. A lot of it comes from reclaiming their sexual nature and the sacredness of their womb space and their entire being, their voice being totally connected to their womb space as well. And just to move from a place of joy and happiness, and really to dream big and reconnect with their childhood selves who knew how to dream and knew their worth and knew the importance that they live out their purpose. Because I think so oftentimes, oftentimes the women that I work with, they're in this box and they have like these blinders on, and they're like, they don't know what's wrong. They don't see what they want in front of them, but they feel that something's off. And it's like taking those blinders off, being able to re-expand into your full purpose and your full beingness is really just brings me so much joy, because it's what I've been doing and it's been my journey. And it's a journey that's still unfolding for me. So being able to bring other women along with me is really something that brings me joy.
Did you say wound space or womb space?
Womb space, yeah, womb space.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's a really powerful and sacred space, and people knew this back in the tantric traditions. Everybody really reverenced this space between the seen and unseen worlds. It's the life force, the life energy of our human race. It lives in that space. So when we feel unattached from it, women are often told certain ways that they need to keep it, or certain uses for it. And so it gets conflicted. Like we get disassociated from these spaces, these really sacred and important spaces. And we start living from our heads, and rather than living from our hearts and from, frankly, our womb space. It's a little different, I think, for women when you say, speak with your womb space rather than speak with your dick or something. But, it's really important that women are at least in tune with and in touch with what that space holds, the energy there and the power there. Because I think what happens is we'll have a trauma, whether it's a sexual abuse, or even just heartbreak or something connected to that region. I know when I was younger, I used to, or all throughout my life until my 20s, I would say, I used to get just terrible UTIs. So that I would always take, have to take antibiotics. And now I see it as really a spiritual lesson of me needing to connect back into that space, and that, this is the universe sending me a sign that like, there is something to be uncovered and healed here. And since I've started to do more healing around my womb space, I haven't had any UTIs, which has been amazing, and just goes to show you that there are a lot of spiritual meanings behind our ailments. But that wasn't your question.
I mean, follow-up question on that. So, you said that women get disassociated with their womb space or their womb chakra, right? Like, bear with me, because there's a point behind my lostness here, right? So where I grew up and where I was raised, nobody was teaching any women about chakras. Nobody was teaching any women about divine energies or anything, or any of this kind of stuff. We were just taught maths, science, whatever. And then the women at home, the mothers, where I grew up, they were hard. They were like teaching you how to like knuckle down, to be subservient to men, to all this kind of stuff, right? So like, I'm thinking, I'm thinking, well, isn't this like an endemic problem throughout Western society where
Oh, totally.
Like, you're more naturally to be disassociated from this space?
100%. Yeah. Yep, for sure. And I think there's such a fantasy around it, not a good fantasy of like this fantasy that doesn't really need to be there because we don't give it enough space and attention when you're younger. Like for me personally, I don't, nobody in my family talked about sex. I learned about sex from kids who were older than me and, who I would hang out with sometimes. So it's like, even that says a lot that you're not learning about these things from people who care and are in your best interest, wanting you to learn something. It's like, you kind of just hear it from this like mystical standpoint of like, ooh, I wonder what that has to do with life or whatever. You're just really, really intrigued by it. So, I think we go into sex in the Western world from this standpoint of like not knowing anything about it, not knowing the sacredness or the specialness, and like the power behind it. And I think that's really missing. I would like to believe that when, these stories were getting passed down, when people used to speak about things and not, kids weren't learning from the television and stuff, like kids more had a better idea about these types of things, like babies and bringing conception, bringing life into the world. And even, being able to see that in nature, which kids nowadays don't get to see. They don't get to witness as much happenings in nature and as much mating and what have you, births of live animals. I remember when I was younger, we went to a farm when I was in first grade. And at my graduation, they were talking about it and they were like, does anybody want to share what they learned on the farm? And I raised my hands and I was like, I saw a little lamb, like, where did that baby come from? So just, it was a curious thing for me. And it was for all the kids in my class as well. Right. So it's just, I think, approaching it from a different standpoint. It's for adults and kids and for everybody, really, from a more sacred and a more sensual standpoint, and teaching young girls too, like how powerful they are and how much magic that they have inside of them, because that's what it is to little kids, and even to us adults who believe in the woo-woo stuff, that it is truly magical. So yeah, coming back to like this demystification of the womb space. And it actually has a lot to do with our fifth chakra as well. The second and the fifth chakra are very closely linked. So I know for me, when I was super detached or disassociated from my womb space, I also had a really hard time speaking my truth, like a really hard time. It was like painful that I could think my thoughts and I couldn't express them with my voice. And that's a real problem for a lot of women. I know a ton of women do work around finding your voice. And, I just see it as a natural byproduct of reestablishing your sacred sensuality and sexuality.
A lot of information there for me to suck in. Let me just suck it all in. Oh, okay. I mean, it is hard. It is hard. Like, I sleep with my 4-year-old daughter, right? So last night we got to bed, and she's fiddling with her vagina, and sniffing her fingers. Yeah. And as a dad, your initial reaction is, "Oh, don't do that! Like, don't do that!" Right? But because I'm more enlightened, I'm kind of like, what happens in my head instead is, "Don't do that." Comes up like split second, and then it's like, okay, that's not the right response. How do we deal with this? So then I'll ask questions, and but it's and then. I haven't done this yet, but then I'll make a mental note. I need to talk to Liza about that, like my wife, and then be like, okay, how are we going to deal with these instances which are obviously going to come up, right? Like, how are we going to deal with it in an educational sense, in a spiritual sense, in a non-shaming sense, so we can, like, I don't know, like have one eye on how the world wants us to operate, but also allow space for this. Like, because we can't she can't go into McDonald's and just drop her knickers and start playing with herself, right? So you need to have that kind of aspect in check, whilst at the same time fostering or raising a child who is like completely and utterly comfortable with her sexuality, right? It's hard.
It is. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, me and my friends used to play doctor. Like, we just wanted to know what was going on down there. That's like the main attraction when you're, I think I was about 5 when, or maybe younger, when I started doing that with my friends, just not in a sexual way, but just in a way of like, what is this thing? It's so complicated and complex and beautiful, of course, but really just to learn about what it's there for and what it means or what it represents being a woman, the receiving aspect of it, not just like receiving the D, but like being receivers of the energy and the children, of course, and just really energy. That's how women show up in the world, and men are helpers and givers, and they output and we input more. So just the energetics behind being a female and being a male, I mean, if those could be taught at a younger age, which I know a lot of parents are doing that, of course, is just, I think, really important. I was actually at my friend's not too long ago, and they have some little kids, and they were talking about how, the little kids are starting to get really interested. I think the kids are like 5 and 7, and it's a boy and a girl. So they're like, of course, coming from that place of concern, but at the same time realizing they need to give the space for kids to explore and to see what that looks like. And this is a super taboo topic. I mean, you're probably going to get like some hate for this, but I think it is really important that we let kids explore. The same with, I know you deal with addiction a lot. I think a lot of addiction comes from keeping this stuff so hidden and so locked away. And it's like when we can get our hands on it, it's like, oh my gosh, more alcohol, more drugs. Like we can finally get away from the parents and do this kind of stuff. So I think it's just really important in all these areas of taboo and mystical things. It's natural for human beings to want those taboo, hidden, mystical things. Whereas if you enlighten people on them, it's like, oh, okay, this is what it does. This is how it works. And, it interplays with all this other stuff as well. So yeah, I think you're doing the right thing with your daughter, where you're just kind of allowing what happens to happen and you not reacting, because that can really make kids shy. I know from what I've heard that it can kind of traumatize kids if you tell them that it's wrong and it's not something that they should be doing.
Generally, what will happen is it will become part of their secret space, right? So they'll be like, I'm going to go and do this in secret because it's not allowed in front of my parents. And another thing the kids do is they hump. Like they just get things and hump because it's nice, and they'll do it in the middle of the floor in front of the whole family. And then all of a sudden you'll be like, feel like embarrassed and ashamed. But now like I'm able to be like, oh God, where's that coming from? And it's coming from external validation, sticking with rules, that kind of thing. So then it's like, hey, if you want to go hump something, you might want to do it in your bedroom and hump in private because it's your private time. But like just linking this, the childhood, female innocence of just exploring your sexual organs and stuff when you're young, and that leading to addiction if you're not allowed, raised in the right way to do that. Like I had a conversation with my son yesterday. He's 19, right? So I have a 4-year-old and I have a 19-year-old. And we were just talking about like, he'd been watching Fight Club and he started to get it into his head. Okay, right. So in Fight Club, they all had a mission. They were all together as a tribe. They didn't care where they lived. What they had was immaterial. They were against advertising. And it spoke to him. And he was like, okay, well, I don't no longer need these really expensive trainers. I don't need this Gucci shirt, right? So he started to think like that. And then he was like, Dad, give me some advice on what to eat. So I'm like, well, the thing is, you like to bodybuild and bulk up, which got into the conversation of, well, why are we doing that? Like, why are we bulking up? Are we bulking up because we look in the mirror and we find ourselves beautiful? Or are we bulking up because we want people to look at us and think that we're beautiful? And in fairness to him, he was like, there's an aspect of both there, right? There's an aspect of both. Now, that aspect of him looking at himself in the mirror and thinking he's beautiful, I love that, right? I love that. I want to foster more of that in him. I want him to have more of that like growth mindset, know that he's worth enough. But that aspect of I need to just put my bicep up and put it on social media because I want somebody to tell me they like me, that is what ends up in addiction. And parents have a responsibility to interject in there and have these uncomfortable conversations. And they won't they won't um, they won't happen organically. You need to create a trusting, secure container for your children so they will be vulnerable with you, knowing that you won't judge them. Over to you. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think really exemplifying that within your own behavior is the most powerful thing you can do for a kid. Like, I know I've had to work off of a lot of, my mom like grew up in a Catholic family, like very traditional. I'm much less traditional, but I grew up within those structures. So a lot of it made me feel wrong. Like, I didn't think I was supposed to be having sex before marriage. I didn't think that I purposely tried to be rebellious with my clothing, and just because I wanted to break out of that, but also feeling a lot of guilt and shame as well, because it's like I didn't really have females in my family who were doing that. So it was like me, I was kind of going first. And that in of itself is scary. And, we talk about generational trauma and stuff. That might be a conversation for another day, but like, just to take all of that on yourself, like from my standpoint as being now an adult, but being a child not too long ago, it's a lot. It really is. So I think just exemplifying the fact that you don't need to feel shame, you don't need to feel guilt for your body or for who you are or how you want to express yourself. I would imagine if your son's 19, he's thinking about girls and, how is he going to attract? Yeah. I'm sure. How is he going to attract a girl into his life? And that's all really important and great. And just to show him that, yeah, he has your support, and, hey, this is how I carry myself. If you're wondering, I don't hold these unrealistic expectations, or, you work more on yourself than your physical self, more on your mental and emotional, and being the person that you are is more important than how you look on the outside, I think is the best message that we can give young men and women today.
I think when you talk about, like, I hear that story. I hear this story so much. I was raised Catholic, and like I hear that so much, right? And it's almost like if we're raised in a way that is diametrically opposed to the way we intuitively feel we want to behave, and then we don't really get our parents back in, like they're really trying to kind of rigidly stick us to like going to church, all this kind of stuff, right? In a way, it's abandonment, right? Like our parents are abandoning us. And like childhood abandonment, whether it's psychological or physical, is always going to lead to shame, which is very often going to lead to addiction, right? So if you're listening to this, folks, right, abandonment in childhood is really important. Now, I know a lot of you listening to this will be going, yeah, right, boom, I get it now. I'm like, it's my dad's fault, or it's my mum's fault, or whatever. But I'm not quite sure what goes on enough is you going, oh, shit, what am I doing right now? Am I abandoning my kids right now? So I want you to think about that, folks, right? While you're picking up the bottle or smoking your cigarettes or watching your pornography or gambling or taking your drugs or whatever, where are you physically or emotionally abandoning your children right now? And when are we going to be prepared to draw that line in the sand, right? So we don't keep going this vicious cycle. Mary, what was I going to ask you? What are the things that you're seeing in your work that are coming up in terms of regular problems that you have to consistently deal with that are showing up in women? Because I know subjectively everybody's going to be different, but there'll be themes, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I see a lot of relationship problems, a lot of women that feel like they want to break out of this traditional molds that they've put themselves in, and without having to break the relationship, they want to evolve and change. And I'm sure you see that with some of the men you work with as well. So, and I think it's such a beautiful place to be in, to realize that you want to change the way that you're showing up in your relationship. And also, I feel like women, we have this programming where because we want to do it all, and because we become such high achievers and overperformers within the family and in work and in school, I think that there's this thing that happens when women take risks, or they do really well, and then they reach this point where they hit a failure. They hit a road bump. They hit this block. For me, it was, getting this terrible depression out of seemingly nowhere at the time. That's what it felt like. And just really being at this standstill where I couldn't put in 110% effort like I was used to doing. And I hear this from a lot of women, whether it's, losing somebody in their family or losing a job, any number of setbacks, even just financial problems or problems with their mental health, which are huge. I don't mean to say only. And then they feel like they can't continue on. And it's like, oh, these passions and these visions that I had for myself because I hit this roadblock, because I failed, quote unquote, this one time, I can't keep going with it. I can't pick up and move on. And so that is one of the biggest blocks that I find with the women that I work with. I find them at this place having failed, whether it was recently or even in the past, and they're just too afraid to get back up and try again. It's like this, it's the social pressure, I think. It's the not wanting to look like a failure, just being too afraid to even try.
So how do you deal with that? How do you combat that? How do you get them to feel a fear and do it anyway, as Susan Jeffers would say?
First step is to realize that these little failures are part of it. So it's to really check in and ask whether the vision is big enough and important enough that you're willing to have more of these. And oftentimes when we frame it like that, when we frame it as if you're at step 2 and you need to get to step 50 to achieve this goal, step 1 and 2 were failures. If every other step is going to be a failure, do you still care enough about this goal to go for it? If the answer is yes, great. Let's dive in and do the work that you need to get you there, which clarity is step number 1. And that's part of the clarity. Part of building the clarity is to understand that you're going to have to go through this maybe a few more times. And is it worth it to you? And if it's not, then, go back to the drawing board and pick a new vision, because it's not big enough to pull you forward. It's like, we both have the same coach, Preston Smiles, and he recently schooled me on this. I was even dealing with this myself, which was, allow yourself to be pulled. Stop pushing and allow yourself to be pulled by that which is greater than you. The vision, the circumstances, the God that is within each of us and that lives within our own life, whether your God is, Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, Allah, energy, universe, source, the sun, like just allow yourself to be pulled forward by what really lights you up.
So what kind of practices are you incorporating in terms of helping them out? So like, is it personal coaching? Is it online coaching videos? Do you do breath work? What is it you're doing? How do you sprinkle your magic dust on them?
So I do all online coaching, so all video coaching or phone if that's more comfortable. But I start with connection, because I believe that with everybody that I've coached, the most powerful transformations have happened when the client actually has a really positive, when she has a super strong connection to her vision and to her source. So like daily meditation practices, whether this looks like a traditional sit down and meditate practice for you, or whether it looks like getting up and going for a walk every day. Maybe it looks like saying hi to 5 people every day, because that's like where your stretch is. It's different for everybody. And small acts of bravery and small acts of courage go such a long way, especially for women. We get, and I'm speaking for myself as well, we get really in our heads sometimes, and really in our little princesses. We don't want to break the mold that we're in because it becomes comfortable, but that's really not where the growth is. The growth is out there when we step into our queendoms and, we really rise to the occasion and be outspoken and lean into our masculine energy. Even I'm huge into my masculine energy, because that is where I can make magic happen. As long as I'm in alignment with the feminine, I can step right into the masculine. And that's when I create in my life. And I think a lot of women lean on to the feminine, but then when it comes to creating and when it comes to being expressive and speaking their truth and frankly, telling people off when they need to be told off. It's one of the most important things we can do for ourselves, to hold those boundaries and to speak our truths like that. So yeah, working with women in that way is just so amazing, because it took me such a long time to come to my purpose and to come to what really drives me and pulls me forward. So it's like to help other women uncover that, and even more, go through sometimes the hell that needs to be gone through in order to claim their vision and claim their highest versions of themselves, is like just so incredible and amazing to see the transformations. And we are coming into a really amazing world right now. I know it might not feel like it to most people, but I see it, I feel it. And the transformations that are going on right now, especially in the female community, is just so magical, so good. And I'm super excited.
Tell me a little bit more about masculine and feminine energy. Maybe you could give some examples, because growing up where I did, there was women and there was men, and that was it. There was no, I had no feminine energy. I was just a man, and a woman was just, had feminine energy. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So traditionally, the easiest way to understand it is to think about when you're just in the flow. So in a flow state, you could be, maybe you're playing your favorite sport, and just the feeling tone of that, or listening to your favorite song and just feeling so like uplifted by it. Or maybe you're watching your favorite sport, and just that rush of emotions, that energy, and you can act on that all day long. Like I could spend a whole day just in my flow, no, a lot of times associated with like no timing of anything, just the natural, the rising of the sun, the rising of the moon, the setting of the sun, all of that good stuff, the flow of the clouds, really looking at nature for that. And then when you talk about the masculine, it's like the action or the interruption. So if there's a storm that comes in, that could be like viewed as the masculine, or the doing, or the, I'm going to do this for 10 minutes and then I'm going to, do this for 10 minutes. So some people, they think of meditation as like a really feminine act, but some people will approach it very masculinely, like set their timer for 45 minutes, do 10 minutes of this type of breath work and count every single breath. And, that's a very masculine approach to things. So everything isn't inherently masculine or feminine. I think everything can be viewed with a masculine and feminine emotion, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what you're saying to me is like, in a coaching sense, in your work or in my work, identifying if an individual is off kilter and is leaning too much towards masculine energy, then a discovery in that area could point to almost like a remedy, being, okay, we need to get you incorporating more feminine type of like action to your life. So for example, listening to what you're saying, and I'm very heavily weighted to masculine energy. And then just before we came on air, I was feeling really lonely and sad. So I sang, which would be feminine energy. And I think the reason that I was so lonely and sad is because I'd been spending too much time in my masculine energy. So
yeah. You guys tap back into that lonely, maybe childhood self or something for a minute. And two, you brought up a really good point, because we can be working from wounded masculine or wounded feminine, which can also throw us off. So an example of this would be if I go out, maybe I go to, a dance festival or something, and every guy that I want to dance with like isn't interested in me or something. So now when I go out to dance festivals, like I don't even look forward to getting danced with, or even ask people, or, put myself out there in that way. And that's like working from a wounded aspect of myself. Or if like I was always doing, which I did used to do this in school, where I would just try to get straight A's, doing. And it's like, that was me working out of this need for approval, like from my dad in particular, who was like a real big doer. And so I really wanted to like do so that I would be approved of. And so that's not really as in alignment as it would be, oh, I love the subject that I'm studying. I love the outcome of what this studying is going to do. So that's why I'm doing it. That's more of like an alignment doing rather than like a doing out of the need for approval or something that comes from a place of wound inside of us that, we're always working and shifting to not just fill, but to heal. Yeah. Because a lot of times I think what we're doing is filling the spaces rather than healing the spaces and the places.
That the wounded masculine, that came out when I was talking to my son. I could recognize that in my son yesterday, actually. Wounded masculine. One thing you said there a while ago now, which I thought was really important, is you said you love it when you are working with the women and you're connecting them to the vision or their source, right? But you didn't mention a man or another woman. So that they're in a relationship and they're unhappy, but you're not like focusing on the other man or the woman. You're focusing on them, right? Just expand upon that because it's an important point.
100%. I mean, we can only heal each other to a certain extent. We really only have the ability to heal ourselves truthfully. We can be in places where coaches are the most powerful tools, speaking personally, and coaching only goes so far if you're not willing to do the work. So ownership, that was another thing that I wanted to bring up before with you, was the ownership aspect of these wounds and of our own healing. When we put that on somebody else and we don't take responsibility for our own healing, we can never really truly be in a solid connected relationship when we're constantly blaming or assessing responsibility, giving responsibility to the other person to heal us. So my approach with my clients is that our relationships are only as good as ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. So if we can't heal ourselves, then we're never going to be able to heal our relationships. So it really starts with the self-talk, the self-healing, letting go of shame, letting go of regret, and taking on that responsibility, especially as females. I think that women have taken on a lot of responsibility since the 60s and the 70s, and being really jack of all trades. We do it all now, and it's a lot. And sometimes women that I work with forget that it is their number one responsibility to take care of themselves. Their kids, their relationships to their partners, all are an offshoot of their capacity to love themselves and to heal and to help themselves on a day-to-day basis. It's a daily thing. It really is. So that's my 2 cents on that.
It's really interesting because I got you on because I know you work with women, and I was thinking to myself, let's get Mary on, because if she works with women, then they'll all be moaning and groaning about all these things that the men are doing wrong. So we'll be able to learn what the men are doing wrong. So any men listening to this could benefit. But now, and I've changed I'm not just working with men at the moment, actually. I just want to help everybody, right? So
beautiful, yeah.
So what I'm thinking now is talking to you is that let's follow this logic through. So a woman comes to you, she's lost and she doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't feel right about herself and her relationships, and she's disconnected from her man. You get her to see that she's disconnected from herself, she's disconnected from source, she's disconnected from her vision, and then you help her to become connected. Now, I'm assuming that as she becomes connected, then the emotional attunement that is going to happen with her children and with her husband, basically this guy is going to change as a result of her changing, or he doesn't change. And she's like, okay, I don't need this guy in my life anymore. But we're not asking the guy to do anything, right? We just focus on ourselves. And if we focus on ourselves, then that's all we can do. And we're kind of like trusting that our partner will be like, okay, what's going on here? Obviously getting them involved in the conversation. So I don't, when Liza goes to Sedona, my wife, she's working on herself. Like she's not asking me to do anything, but when she comes back, I will feel this emotional attunement to her because she's my life. So like if her vibration is really high and she's in her joy, and she's got this mixed balance of feminine, masculine energy going on, then I'm going to be attuned to that and I'm going to behave accordingly, right?
Totally. I think that's super important. And women set such a vibe for their households, and even their workspaces too. I used to notice this when I was working in law offices. I was did paralegal and legal assistant work, and the women of the office always kept the vibe super duper high. And it was like, almost, I felt like some women were there and were being paid just to come in and like keep the vibe high for the men. And I know that sounds crazy and a little patriarchal, but patriarchal, is that a word? But I mean, here we are in this patriarchal system. So to say that these women were adding, and myself included, adding this really important value, which is just to the energy of the company. I mean, that's huge. That can be worth millions, billions of dollars every year. Just to, if you know anything about energy, you know how important it is, and it can really float or sink any relationship, any marriage, any workspace. So to have happy women in your life is super powerful. I don't think I have to tell anybody this twice, because I think everybody out there has experienced having both a happy and a non-happy female in their life that's close to them. And that's not to say that you have to keep them happy, but just giving them that space and that understanding that they get to go out and do their own thing and help themselves. Sometimes I think women don't even give themselves that gift of knowing that. So if the man can actually even give that gift of like space and boundaries for her, like that's really beautiful. If at times she's kind of lost in the day-to-day giving and helping everybody else out, like if he can uphold that and be like, hey, why don't you like do something for yourself? Or why don't you, how about I pick up the kids and you can go do that thing that you love to do? Because sometimes I think women forget that like they're totally worth it. I mean, I know that they forget, because sometimes my clients forget that they're totally fucking worth it and more. Like we are so important, and we really set the tone for so much in our world. So much. We give guys too much credit around here. So
take it, women. I can
take some back.
I can actually give you a real life example of emotional attunement, because it happened this morning, right? So I came down this morning looking after my daughter. It's my job, and Liza says, I'm going to be taking her out at like 9:30. So can you help me get her ready? Right? So I'm like, sure. What do you want me to do? Make her some snacks, make her breakfast, get her dressed, brush her teeth, just all that kind of stuff. Okay, no problem. So I'm doing that, but as I'm doing it, I'm like listening to Marco Polo messages on my headphones as I'm doing everything. And it's clearly bugging her. Like it's bugging her, right? To the point where like we start to have a little bit of a fight, right? Like because she's like, I wanted you to get her ready. Well, of course, I'm in my masculine energy, and I'm kind of like, what are you on about? I've done everything. Like I've done everything. I've ticked everything. She's going to be out the door in the right time. What are you worried about? Okay. But then when I calm down, right? When I calm down because of the work that I've done or the work that we've both done, I can say to myself, well, what's happened there is I have become attuned to her unspoken anxiety, right? So she's anxious that I'm not going to do my job because I probably let her down in the past of doing it, right? So I'm tapping into her unspoken emotional energy and attunement of anxiety. And then because I'm tapped into that, it generates shame because I'm not doing my job as a dad. And I don't want that shame. So I'm going to put it back on you by telling you, what's your fucking problem? I've done everything you told me to do. This is your issue, right? So now knowing that, right? So you can have your little outburst, but knowing that allows you to go, okay, that's what happened, right? Need to fix this and sort this out later on, have a little chat about what happened, and then, take 100% responsibility and fess up. As opposed to, like, many years ago, if I'd been in that same situation, I would desperately want to cling on to the fact that I was right, that I got her out the door on time. What's your fucking problem, right? And that's just going to breed more toxicity, all that kind of stuff. So I guess whilst I said the woman just has to look after the woman and the man will just kind of like just miraculously change. Obviously that won't happen. There needs to be an aspect of a conversation that says, okay, I'm looking after myself, but you need to look after your side of the net as well. What are you going to do and how are you going to show up?
Yeah, interesting. And it really sounds like it was an energetic thing between both of you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the feminine energetic can often be misunderstood because it's so powerful as well. Another misconception about feminine energy is that like it's just gentle. Like I think it also has the ability to be extremely powerful, and like the overwhelming feeling of like, just think of even like the death of like your grandmother or something like that. That feeling of like the feminine, it can just be so strong. Have you ever journeyed with Aya before?
No. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one for me because, you know, I'm abstinent from everything. So
right.
I have thought about it, but as a leader of people who are trying to be abstinent, it's difficult for me to go there. So
yeah, that's interesting. One of the medicine men that I sat with, he completely turned his life around from years of heroin addiction just from sitting with Aya, which there's so many stories like that, which I just find so incredible. So I know it can be really good, but not promoting it for anybody trying to quit. Just saying that it has the ability to help.
Hang on, let me just interject there. Look, if you're listening to this and you want to try ayahuasca or ibogaine or any of those things in order to beat addiction, go fucking do it. You know, go do it, and then check back in with me if you're doing them every week. You know, like
yeah. True. I don't know if you could do it. Well, you probably could, but it would be a lot. That's a really feminine plant.
Right.
So that's a good one to understand the feminine energy. That's all I was going to say about that. If you did experience that, you know, a lot of men are able to reconnect with their emotions through that. Men that have like serious blocks. Aya is just like, nope, you're not going to hold on to that. You have to feel it.
It seems like it helps with submission and surrender. So I imagine when you're stuck in your masculine energy that you don't want to go. And so I guess when I'm saying stuck in masculine energy, I'm talking about women and men. They don't want to go there. They don't want to feel the pain. They don't want to feel, they don't want to face the suffering. They don't want the fear of change and all this overwhelm that comes with it. But if you give it this thing and say, drink this, and then it's just got no way of like controlling what the fuck's going to happen. Like, so I've never taken ayahuasca, but when I was younger, I used to take LSD quite a bit, right? So when I was, and most of my trips were bad. Like, I could never control them. And the more I try to control them, the worse I would get. So I can see definitely how that could help someone who's not willing to submit or surrender to get where he needs to get to.
You never had a good LSD trip?
Never, ever, ever. All bad. That's another thing that worries me actually about taking ayahuasca or any other plant medicine. Like, I don't trust that I wouldn't just freak the fuck out and jump off a fucking skyscraper. Not that I would be on a skyscraper.
Well, LSD is man-made, so maybe you had a bad reaction to the chemicals in it, because I mean, I only promote for my clients, like if they want to do plant medicine. Like I really have not found better teachers when it comes to releasing, letting go, accepting, feeling the different forces of life, really, and just even coming to terms with things like death and birth and just happenings. I sat for one experience with a group at the very beginning of Corona. Like I'm talking very beginning, where it was like, are we allowed to go outside or whatever? And we just decided to go on with it despite whether or not the world was falling apart. And it was one of the most powerful journeys ever. 'Cause it's like, it's all just happening for a reason, you know? It just really brought that point home for me. And I don't think I would be here with you currently in the Leap and in your realm coaching if it wasn't for that particular journey, because that's what really made me anchor in on continuing to redefine who I am in the coaching space. So that was really powerful for me. Yeah,
Okay,
not giving up,
No, for those of you listening,
face the failure and the hardship.
For those of you listening, the only plants that I'm going to eat tonight are celery and cucumber, and the only mushrooms I'm going to have are thinly sliced in my mung bean pancakes. Mary
Those
Tamul,
still have some powerful practices. Those have some powerful properties.
That's all I ever eat. It's all I ever eat is mung dal pancakes.
That's
Mary's
an Ayurvedic food.
Is it? Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
Kachari spice. Is that Ayurvedic as well? Kachari spice?
I think so, yeah.
I think so.
Sounds
It's been a pleasure having you on. We didn't talk about anything like we said we was going to talk about.
No, we didn't.
but that's okay. Who cares? It was for sure valuable to people. If you want to learn more about Mary Tamul's work, then head to www.1000dayssober.com. Go on the podcast page. You'll see a perfect little space just for Mary, and it'll have all the links and everything that you ever want to see about Mary. And then, sign her up, get on a discovery call with her and sample her goodness and get working with her, folks. Mary, got anything, last words you want to tell us before you head off into the desert?
Daylight out there, people. It's all coming together. It's part of the plan. You got this.
Stay cool. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Lee.
Just another reminder, folks, that if you want to work with Lee, Davey, that's me, and the rest of the 1000 Days Sober coaching team, then get over to www.1000dayssober.com and book yourself a Choose Yourself call with me or a member of the 1000 Days Sober team so we can see if you're a good fit to take the Strive Method for Addictions course, the Strive Method for Relationships course, or just join the Strive support team. And if you're feeling in a really, really serving mood, please rank and rate our podcast at whatever podcast platform you do, or spread the word around social media and tell people to come and listen to us. Thank you very much. Love you all. Bye.